Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, we're about to go over my top 30 wide receivers in fantasy football in 2023. We got some crazy picks on here towards the end, so without further ado, we're going to get right into it. If you enjoy this content, at the end, of course, drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. First person up on this list, Justin Jefferson in S tier. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Jefferson is going as number one in most fantasy drafts other than Christian McCaffrey I've seen at certain times, but 1,400 yards as a rookie, 1,600 yards in his second year, and then 1,800 yards in 2023. I'm expecting close to 2,000 yards for Justin Jefferson in this upcoming season. He's increased his yards per game, his receptions per game, and his targets per game every single season that he's been in the league so far. Can't get enough of Justin Jefferson. If I have the number one pick, personally, I'm going Jettas all day long. Up next here in S tier as well, we have Tyreek Hill. I think a lot of these guys could be flip-flopped around. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Ja'Marr Chase, and Cooper Kupp. In any order you want, those four guys should be on the top four of your list, and they're all solid options. They could all be in S tier, but personally, I just have Jefferson and Hill in S tier. Listen, Tyreek Hill says he's aiming for 2,000 receiving yards in this upcoming season, and I believe him. I think he could easily do that and be the first one, but Tua was out for multiple games last season. All right, with the concussion, I think it obviously wore down the team mentally, and I don't think they were fully into it. This season, if Tua is healthy the whole year, I expect Tyreek to absolutely explode. Even in 2020, when Tyreek had 17 touchdowns total, he only had 1,276 receiving yards. So just imagine if he can eclipse that 2,000 receiving yard mark and score more touchdowns this year, because he only had 8 touchdowns last year. If he scores double-digit touchdowns and gets 2,000 receiving yards, come on. You got to take the risk on Tyreek. It's not even a risk, but he could finish as number one very easily. Next guy up on our list, like I said, could easily be involved in that S tier. Ja'Marr Chase here. He could finish as the number one wide receiver in fantasy. He only played in 12 games last season, and he still eclipsed 1,000 yards. I love the Joe Burrow-Ja'Marr Chase combination. Explosive, elite-level talent. That's why he's number 3 on this list, but personally, I just have Jefferson and Hill above him. Next guy up on our list today, Cooper Kupp. He's coming in at number 4 today. He was on pace to come very close to replicating his breakout 2021 season where he was only 53 yards shy of breaking that 2,000 receiving yard mark until he had that high ankle injury. Now, he hurt his hamstring in practice early on in training camp this season, so a lot of people were worried. He was falling down to bottom of the first round of the draft. I think that was a big mistake. He's fully healthy now. He's supposed to play in week 1. And when he's on the field, he's one of the most consistent guys in fantasy football. All right, him and Matt Stafford are on the same page, clearly his go-to target. So I expect more of the same this upcoming season for Cooper Kupp. Next up on our list, Stefon Diggs. Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs, that combination is deadly in fantasy if you can get both of them. Since coming to Buffalo, Diggs has been the most effective that he's been in his entire career. All right. He had the most touchdowns of his entire career last season as well. He's a very safe option personally. If you can get him early in the second round, especially if you can have, another wide receiver as your number 1 and then get Diggs as your second wide receiver, I would love that. I mean, some drafts he goes late first round, some drafts he goes early second round, but I'm telling you right now, if you can steal him early second round, it's a great option for you. Now, this upcoming season, not a lot of people are talking about it, but he's going to be turning 30. He doesn't play like he's turning 30, all right? He still plays like he's 25 years old, so I'm not too worried about his age here. Maybe a couple years down the line, 2-3 years down the line, then we'll start having that conversation about Stefon Diggs being a little bit old to draft in fantasy, but as of right now, I think he's clearly top 5 in the league. Next man up on this list, number 6, CeeDee Lamb. I have extremely high hopes for CeeDee Lamb in this upcoming season because I don't think he's come even close to reaching his full potential just yet. And I do think that Dak is holding him back on this Cowboys team. The Cowboys fans are going to come after me like crazy, and that's fine. But if he had a different quarterback on this offense that was better than Dak, I think CeeDee Lamb could be top 3 in the league. Now, he's only 24 years old right now. He's increased his yards per game, receptions per game, and touchdowns every single season in the league so far. I expect more of the same this season. As long as Dak can stay somewhat consistent throughout the year, I love CeeDee Lamb, and he's a real steal in the second round of drafts if you can get him there, or even with the 12th pick in the first round, I wouldn't mind drafting him whatsoever. Number 7 here, Davante Adams. A little shocking having him this low on the list. He is a very safe fantasy football option. Now, it's a similar situation to Cooper Kupp here, where I think the age is kind of moving people a little bit off of him, but he's still going to be a great, viable fantasy option. Still one of the best in the league and a nightmare for corners to guard. The only red flag here is Jimmy G. He doesn't throw the ball downfield quite as much as Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers has in the past, and he's a little bit more inaccurate than both of those guys. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of baked in risk here. That's why Adams is going in the second round of most drafts. I don't think it's a bad pick at all here at number 7. Coming in at number 8 here, Amon-Ra St. Brown. It might be a little bit of a controversial take having him above A.J. Brown. You guys are probably running to the comments section right now saying A.J. Brown should be above Amon-Ra St. Brown. But listen, okay, the Lions overall should be a much better team this year. Jared Goff clearly trusts Amon-Ra a ton with the ball, as he got the most targets last year, and he probably will this upcoming season, especially with Jameson Williams being out for the first 6 games of this year. He was a little bit inconsistent in training camp and preseason, so I don't know what that situation is going to look like once he's even back on the field. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously got drafted to the Lions this year, so he's going to take a couple targets away here and there, but it should be nothing crazy. Amon-Ra is still clearly the number 1 on this team. He's increased his production each and every year in the league so far. And if you have Amon-Ra St. Brown in your dynasty fantasy football leagues, you are rejoicing right now if you got him 2 years ago, because he is paying off massive and he will be great for years to come. Next up is going to be A.J. Brown. Extremely talented guy on the Eagles. Love his connection that he's built with Jalen Hurts right now. The best year of his entire career last season with 1,496 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. All right. People seem to think that A.J. Brown is also getting old or something. This guy's only 26 years old. He's got plenty of more time, plenty left in the tank playing in the league. The only reason that I have A.J. Brown under guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Davante Adams is simply because the overall team of the Eagles is so talented. Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, you got DeAndre Swift, so many mouths to feed, and Hurts doesn't force feed anybody. Like some of these other quarterbacks, like Jared Goff, is going to target Amon-Ra, I believe, more than A.J. Brown. And I think Devonta Smith comes very close to actually passing A.J. Brown this season, but we'll get into that in a little bit here. Number 10 on our list, Garrett Wilson. All right, huge improvement at quarterback. I think he got an improvement at quarterback. What would you guys say? Aaron Rodgers over Zach Wilson. If Zach Wilson can, improve over the next couple of years, sitting behind Aaron Rodgers, that would be huge for him and his own personal career. But I think this year, Garrett Wilson is going to explode. All right, his second year breakout has to be real. He eclipsed 1,000 yards last season with some shaky quarterback play, to say the least. I'm expecting a top 10 finish from Garrett Wilson in this upcoming season. Next up here, Jalen Waddle coming in at number 11. Another guy that if he was on a team as the number 1 wide receiver, I would put him higher up on this list. But this season, I wouldn't mind having him as your number 2 wide receiver in fantasy, or even your number 3. If you go 3 wide receivers off the jump, I like how some of those teams are looking, and Waddle could be your flex perhaps. Now he's heading into his 3rd year in the league, coming off a crazy 1,356 receiving yard year, especially when you're taking into account that Tua missed a couple games last season, and Waddle and Hill combined for over 3,000 passing yards last year. I expect another big year here, and I like both of them way more if Tua stays healthy. If Tua gets hurt again, we got a little bit of a problem here. So there's a little bit of baked-in risk here with Jalen Waddle. Overall, they stay healthy. I like him at number 11 here. Next up here at number 12, another guy I really like. I'm insanely high on Chris Olave this year. My expectations are super high. This is another guy that had pretty shaky quarterback play, to say the least, last year. Now, we got Alvin Kamara missing the first 3 games with that suspension, but I will say Michael Thomas is back. If Michael Thomas stays healthy throughout the entire year, that's going to eat into Olave's target share just a bit. I still think Olave is the future. If you have him in dynasty leagues, then you're winning at life. All right, you want to keep this guy for the future. He's going to be a star. Next up, Devonta Smith, number 13. Now, we saw last season when the Eagles games were close and they were not blowing teams out, Smith was targeted much more and dominated in terms of fantasy points per game. Now, with the Eagles' schedule being much more difficult than it was last season, I expect these games to be closer, and I expect there to, Jalen Hurts to be throwing the ball a lot more. I think he could finish in front of A.J. Brown if everything goes right for him, and he was sitting last year around 15 PPR fantasy points per game. I'd expect more of the same, if not around that 20 points per game mark this season. Just watch. Devontae Smith is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this upcoming season. Number 14 here, Calvin Ridley has looked great in preseason, great in training camp. The only red flag that a lot of people are saying, obviously, he's been out of the league for a couple of years now, but I'm not worried whatsoever. Trevor Lawrence should take a major step up this season along with this entire Jaguars team. There's not really much more to say on Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to be a stud this season as the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. Number 15 on this list might be ranked a little bit low for a lot of people, but I think T. Higgins is perfect for the spot. He's a very good player, but I just can't put him ahead of some of these other number 1 receivers on their respective teams. Now, Burrow should be solid like always, and he's a great 1-2 punch with Jamar Chase when he's healthy. Personally, I think Higgins plays even better when Chase is on the field because Chase draws a lot of coverage away from him, and it makes Higgins even more successful. Now, last season, there was a couple games, I don't know what was happening with Higgins when he was expected to play, right? I had him personally on a couple of my fantasy teams. He was expected to play. You put him in your starting lineup, he doesn't play a single snap, or he plays one snap and just does nothing. What are we doing? Is that the head coach's fault? I don't know what is going on, or he pulled himself out of the game. Hopefully, he does not do that to fantasy owners this season, so that's why he's at number 15. There's a little bit of risk baked into T. Higgins this year. Number 16 here, DK Metcalf. I'm expecting a bounce back year here for DK personally. The Seattle offense looked solid last season, and we're hoping that isn't a fluke, right? We're hoping that continues in this upcoming year. Now, JSN should honestly help him benefit even more when he's on the field, when he comes back from that wrist surgery, and you got DK Metcalf, JSN, and Tyler Lockett all on the field at once. There's too many options, all right, for Geno Smith. So somebody's going to be open almost at all times. Now, DK Metcalf accounted for over 25% of targets last season, and he should be in line for more of the same work in this upcoming year. And of course, you're getting him in the 3rd round this season in fantasy drafts. So why not take a risk on DK having a bounce back, explosive year, potentially finishing in the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy football? Number 17 here, Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen is probably one of the safest guys on this list when he is healthy. He's Herbert's go-to option on this offense, and he's always a consistent fantasy option. I don't expect Quentin Johnston, the rookie, to steal too many targets away from Keenan Allen. I would expect him to steal more targets away from Mike Williams. And also, Mike Williams is way more inconsistent than Keenan Allen. So if you want anybody on this offense, I'd say it's Keenan Allen still. In terms of wide receivers, that is. I'm not talking about Austin Eckler. Number 18 here, Deebo Samuel has fallen a lot in drafts. All right. And the reason Deebo is below 17 other guys on this list for me is because Christian McCaffrey gets a lot of passing work. Brandon Ayuk is starting to eat into his work a lot. And I think he could potentially pass him up this season as the number 1 wide receiver for the 49ers. But as for right now, I have Deebo Samuel on this list. I don't have Brandon Ayuk, but that could change by the end of the year for sure. He's extremely explosive when he gets the ball in his hands, but I would prefer a player that's a little bit more consistent on my team personally. If you do believe in the Deebo bounce back year, this should be the season that you're drafting him though, because you're getting him at a severe discount, sometimes in the 4th round. I've seen him go as late as the 5th round. He's probably not going in the 5th round normally, but it's happened a couple times in my drafts and I was shocked. You got to take him at that value. Number 19 on this list, Amari Cooper. Now, this one all depends on Deshaun Watson, in my opinion. If he comes back and plays like he did with the Texans, then Cooper is going to thrive and has the potential to be a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. But if he doesn't, then your potential is capped and potentially having, inconsistent games once again. Now, if that consistency from Watson is there, I would be starting Amari Cooper every single week. And for most teams, he's either your wide receiver 2 or your flex option, which I like a lot. Number 20 on this list is Christian Watson. Now, we don't have too much to go off here. We haven't seen Jordan Love and what he's made of just yet, and Christian Watson was a rookie last season. He was scorching hot from weeks 10 to 13, but his touchdowns were really carrying his stats. He had over a 25% touchdown to catch rate, which was insane. So every 1 in 4 catches was a touchdown for him, which is not sustainable whatsoever. Once we see what Jordan Love is made of, I think we can more accurately depict what we're going to see for the rest of the season. But I think for right now, number 20 is a good spot for Christian Watson. Number 21 here, DeAndre Hopkins. I might be a little low on Hopkins at 21, but The Titans are a run-heavy team with one of the best running backs in the entire league. Now, I know last season the Cardinals ran the ball a lot and they had James Conner, but James Conner is not Derrick Henry. All right, Derrick Henry is going to be getting a lot of the goal line work. I don't know how many times Hopkins is going to see the ball in the red zone. I'm sure when they throw it, it's going to be to him, but who knows how many times that's actually going to be. With Hopkins being 31 years old at the time now, I think you need to lower expectations just a little bit, but I still think he sits around like 15 to 17 fantasy points per game. He's a solid option here. Definitely worth taking as the number 21 wide receiver on my list here today. Number 22 on this list, this is a little bit risky. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Drake London. Now, the Falcons had the lowest passing percentage out of the entire league last season, and London was still effective at certain points throughout the season. He had over 800 receiving yards, and that shows me there is still obviously potential there. He was a rookie last year. Year two breakout, possibly if they throw the ball more. My only red flags for Drake London and why I think he's going as low as he's going is because Bijan Robinson got drafted, obviously, and Desmond Ridder, you don't know what to expect out of him from the QB position. So stay tuned for Drake London. If he breaks out, I think he could easily be top 15 wide receiver in the league. Number 23 on my list today is Chris Godwin. Now, Godwin was a PPR machine last season. The only question in my mind is, was that because Brady was so old that he really wasn't trying to throw it downfield too many times and he was taking those dump off routes and those screen passes near the line of scrimmage? Because if you watched any Tampa Bay games last season, Godwin would get 3 to 4 screens per game minimum. All right, and then he just run after the catch. That's where he was getting most of his fantasy points from. With Baker at quarterback to start the season, do you guys think that Godwin's going to be the same that he was last season, or should we lower expectations just a little bit here? Let me know in the comment section down below. Personally, I think he's going to still command the most targets on the team, but Mike Evans is going to be getting a few more deep balls downfield since Baker is a little bit younger and can still sling the rock around. Number 24 here, DJ Moore. We're really about to see what DJ Moore is made of this season. Now, Fields isn't the greatest quarterback by any means in terms of accuracy and passing, but these two should be able to combine for some explosive plays throughout the course of the season. The only thing that turns me off of DJ Moore, and it has been this way for his entire career, is the inconsistency. He'll drop 30 points at his peak potential, but then some games he'll drop 4 points. And in standard redraft leagues, ESPN leagues, you just can't have that. If we're talking about best ball leagues where you're drafting based on highest potential possible, DJ Moore is a great pick, but not so much in those ESPN leagues, in my opinion. All right, coming in at number 25, this is easily my boldest prediction on this entire list. I'm drafting so much of this guy this year. Jahan Dotson. I think he's going to finish, if not in the top 25, I think he finishes in the top 20. That's crazy. Head down in the comment section right now and call me an absolute bozo for making this prediction, but you're going to come back here week 10, week 11, and see how well he's doing, and you're going to say, oh, I apologize. Listen, you were right about Jahan Dotson. Sam Howell is looking much better than Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz ever has on Washington, and they already have an insanely strong connection. Now, I would rather have Dotson than a lot of number one wide receivers on other teams, talking about the Texans, the Patriots. I could go on, mention a couple other teams, but we'll save the time right here. Now, with Terry McLaurin, right, I probably still have Terry above him if it wasn't for the turf toe incident that just happened the other day. Turf toe can linger throughout the entire season. That's what I'm worried about with Terry McLaurin. But I still was going to put Dotson in the top 30 receivers, regardless if Terry was fully healthy or not. But this just, I have him above Terry McLaurin. So we'll get on to Terry in a little bit here. But Dotson, keep it in your notes. He's going to be good this season. Number 26, Christian Kirk. He had a great season last year, and this team got even better. Like I said earlier with Calvin Ridley, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to take that step up. I think this entire offense got better. Ridley's going to take away the number one cornerbacks on every team. Kirk had to deal with that last season. He doesn't have to deal with that this year. I expect him to be open a lot and often. I think he's a great flex option in this upcoming year. Number 27, listen, I debated not even putting him on this list, and that would have been extremely disrespectful of me to do, but Deontay Johnson is number 27. I think Kenny Pickett is going to take a huge step up this season, and Johnson was so unlucky with scoring 0 touchdowns last year. That cannot happen. If he even scores, 4 or 5 touchdowns this year, you'd be rejoicing, and it's going to boost his fantasy points drastically in this upcoming year. He's a great player on the opposite side of George Pickens. We'll get to Pickens in a little bit here. We'll talk more about this Steelers team. Number 28, Mike Evans. Mr. 1,000 yards every single year. All right, he took a step back last year, but he scored 48.7 PPR fantasy points in week 17 last year. That doesn't hide the fact that, or that doesn't distract me from the fact that he was very inconsistent for most of the season. He didn't seem to have that pure connection with Tom Brady like he did the few years prior. I don't know how much the connection with Baker Mayfield improves his situation too much, so that's why he is at number 28 on this list. Number 29 is going to be Terry McLaurin. I couldn't leave him off this list completely, although I debated it. The turf toe really scares me off Terry. All right, that's why he's so low on this list at 29. If the turf toe wasn't around, he would be sitting around Christian Watson, in my opinion, around that top 20 mark. But as of right now, I knocked him down a little bit. Terry McLaurin is Mr. Consistent when he's on the field. He's going to get you that 15 to 20 fantasy point per game almost every game, which is why I really like him. And I think, once again, Sam Howell, if he plays really well, he's going to be the most consistent quarterback that Terry McLaurin's had over his entire career so far. Last person up on this list, I have Tyler Lockett. All right. If JSN and Tyler Lockett can both stay on the field and both be healthy and both be effective, I like this team's chances to thrive. All right. The only worry here is that if JSN comes in and takes over a little bit of that slot role from Tyler Lockett and they start easing him out of the offense a little bit, I don't know how likely that is to really happen. But if something like that does happen, then I'd be backing away from Tyler Lockett a bit. He is a very consistent receiver if Geno plays well. He knows how to stay healthy. He gets those catches and he goes to the ground right away, and I don't blame him. All right, he's into his mid-30s now, so if he can play as long as humanly possible by just going down once he catches the ball, I do not blame him one bit. But he's still a solid fantasy option. Now, quickly, some players that I did want to talk about before we end off this video. That was the top 30, but Jerry Jeudy comes to mind at number 1. If Jerry Jeudy was healthy, all right, he'd be in that probably F tier around Deebo Samuel, Amari Cooper, that mark. I was very high on Jerry Jeudy. The news about him really sucks. He'll be back week 6, 7, but who knows if he's going to be fully healthy at that point, so I'm not putting him on this list. Another guy I debated putting on this list was George Pickens. Like I said, I almost didn't put Deontay Johnson on this list. I think there's a very strong possibility that Kenny Pickett, really connects with George Pickens, and Pickens becomes the number 1 wide receiver on the Steelers team. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Couple other names here just quickly. Hollywood Brown. I don't know what the quarterback situation's looking like, so I'm not putting Hollywood Brown on this list. Mike Williams, when he is healthy, he's still inconsistent when he's healthy. I'm not going to lie to you guys. He has those games where he'll get 25, 30 points, but he's another guy like DJ Moore where I just can't trust him on a week-to-week basis in redraft leagues. ESPN leagues where I have to set my lineup and he has to be the one to score the points. If it's a best ball league, it's a totally different game, but we're talking about redraft mostly in this video. And then last but not least, Brandon Ayuk. I think he could, like I said, pass up Deebo Samuel on this offense and become the number 1 wide receiver. I just couldn't put him on the top 30 list for the time being, but he could easily get there by the end of the season. Anyways, guys, if you agreed with anything, disagreed with anything, that's completely fine. I'm totally up for discussion in the comment section down below. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we're going to be coming out with those running back rankings later this week. Have a great day and good luck in your fantasy football leagues this year. Peace.